everyone, it's Hannah from Salary Transparency, and welcome to our new show, The Break Room. Here, careers, money, and conversations intersect. We're at the Capital One Cafe in Glendale, and today our panel of software engineers will unravel their diverse pathways into the industry. Get ready for our dynamic discussion on coding, compensation, and the future of software engineering, all right here on The Break Room. Come on.
Rock, paper, scissors.
All right. Paper, scissors, shoot.
Oh, not
right.
me.
Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Okay, you're going ahead.
Which do you recommend? Self-taught, boot camp, or college degree? So I feel like I'm going to be the outlier here. I'm self-taught. Hi, I'm Desi. I am a 33-year-old software engineer living in Los Angeles. I'm currently a team lead at a fintech company. Part of that journey involves full stack engineering, which is both front end and back end. I started learning to code when I was about 13, and I did it because I really wanted to build my own fan sites on actors that I really liked at the time.
Nice.
And I wanted to make my MySpace page look really pretty. So that's how I really got into it. But as I've gotten further into my career, I've done certifications and made sure I was up to speed. But I feel like there's a lot of value in being self-taught because you can think outside of the box. You're not stuck into those things that you learned in college. But I know that you've gotten a degree in CS. So what's your opinion on that?
I have my bachelor's degree in software engineering, or computer science, I guess. Hello, my name is Wendy. I am 31 years old. I am a senior full stack software engineer living in Los Angeles. And I've been a software engineer for 8 years now. I personally wouldn't recommend it nowadays. It'll definitely teach you the foundations that you need to start thinking about problem solving and being a software engineer. But in a way, I feel like we're all kind of self-taught because even me having a computer science background, I wanted to go into web development, and there was only one class out of those 4 years that was oh, this is JavaScript, HTML, CSS. That's not enough. So boot camps are great, I think, for that sense. If you know exactly what you want to do, and let's say you want to learn Python or you want to be a web developer, boot camps are good for that reason because they're very specialized. But at the end of the day, we're leaving college, we're self-taught, we're leaving a boot camp, and we're still learning.
Yeah.
So
I think boot camps are cool if you're really sure that's what you want to do because it's an expensive student journey. So if you're going into it being I'm not sure, web development is what I really want to do, maybe start on that self-taught kind of journey and figure out oh, I really, really like this. This is something I'm really passionate about. Then I would do the boot camp.
I know for me, because I got my undergraduate and my master's degree in 5.5 years. And so I never actually knew how to code going into college. Hey everyone, my name is Josh. I am 25 years old and I live in San Francisco, California. I'm a data engineer and have 1.5 years of experience. And so I feel the introductory classes were helpful, but even once COVID hit, a lot of my learning was self-taught.
Yeah.
And I found a lot of benefit in that outside of the classroom because it kind of got me in that mindset of you talked of being outside of the box where it's kind of I could keep learning even once my class is finished. I found a lot of value in college though in getting involved in different clubs and orgs, being in student government, where it's different opportunities that I feel as a software engineer I wouldn't typically pursue. So outside of the classroom activities, I found a lot of benefit in.
Yeah.
But certain classes I just feel might have been a time suck, or I could have invested my time in other things.
Yeah.
For someone switching careers to tech, where would you recommend that they start?
Find people. Even if you don't know any software engineers, go on LinkedIn, forums like Reddit. There will always be someone who will be willing to help and give resources. But if there's someone in your current company that is in the software engineering department or is a software engineer, talk to them. There was a guy that I used to work with. He was a Scrum Master, and he was interested in just transitioning to being a software engineer. And he was like, Wendy, I'm just gonna grab just a ticket and just something super simple, a one-line code change. Can you guide me through it and see how I would be able to finish this? And you go through kind of like that mentoring route, but it's just really important to have experienced people around you. And even if you don't, like, just go out and online, like just YouTube. There's so many resources online.
I think it's also really important to figure out what you want to do in software engineering, because if you just jump in, you get really, really overwhelmed. There's so many like paths in software engineering, so I think it's important for that person to like figure out, hey, do I want to be like a data engineer, a front-end engineer, a back-end engineer? Do I want to do like design / coding? Like those are important to figure out, because if you get into a role when you're learning that you don't particularly like, it's going to turn you off from software engineering. And I saw a lot of that happen when the pandemic started, and there was like that big tech rush of people wanting to learn how to code, but then they didn't find their bread and butter, so they lost interest. Like it was too hard, or it was like they went to like the analytical side when they were actually a creative, so they didn't find success. So I think that's super important too.
I think having someone to like in your community or network to like that like you're talking about, to kind of like not handhold but kind of like guide you through the process of like what it would take, because I think it does take a lot of like preparation and like consistent practice like we talked about, but also having someone kind of guide you through that, because like I think we've all been in it for a while now, like kind of see all the different options, but like walk you through, and like also practice patience, just because like it's very hard and like it takes a lot of practice, and you're gonna fail a lot in the process of learning. So having someone that's like been there, done that, helps out a lot too.
There's so much failure in software engineering. If you will lose steam if you don't have patience, for sure.
Find your niche, really get really good at it, love it, and you will have no problem finding a job and finding a place that you enjoy working at with the people that are around you, also like pushing you to be better and learning every day. So keep going.
I think it's really important to know what you're going to get into and know that you're going to love it. Otherwise, it's going to be really hard, because there's so much failure and rejection in software engineering. It will, take your steam out a little bit, but if you find a path that you really enjoy, you can really commit to, you're going to find like that software engineering is so beneficial and so fun, and you can create so much stuff in this industry.
How much did you make in your first job at software engineering, and then how much do you make now?
I moved from Florida to California for my first software engineering job, and as a junior I was making $50,000 base, which I think is super low right now.
That's so low.
Very, very low. That was back in 2015. And then now, 8 years later, I'm at 160.
That's awesome. Oh yeah. So when I first started out, it was around 2015, 2016 too. I entered at $65K, which, because I was really awful at negotiation at that time, so I know I left money on the table. I just wanted a job, you know what I mean? I'm like, I'll take it. But now I currently make, 7 years later, $240 to $250. I don't have stock, unfortunately, because I joined as a part of an acquisition, but I have the option to buy stock if I want it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. I've been in my current company for a year and a half, and it's actually the only experience I have thus far, since I'm only a year and a half into my career. And my total compensation is $160K.
That's awesome. That's really good for a year in. That's awesome.
I got the offer, and then I negotiated it.
Smart.
Dad told me to do it, so I was like, we're just gonna see how this goes.
All
So.
they can say is no.
Exactly.
Like, if you met their cap.
My base salary is $133,000, and my RSUs, I agreed to the grant at $50,000, but the stock went up, so they're more like $80,000 paid out over 4 years. The RSU stands for Restricted Stock Unit, and it's a form of compensation that a company can give to an employee for their work to incentivize them to do well. Because if the stock of the company goes up, the value of those units also go up as well, although it gets taxed as a bonus in the state of California.
Does your company use engineering ladders? Because mine does.
Yes. Okay. Like I'm right now I'm like a P4, which is like a manager, I guess.
Oh wow. Okay.
The next level would be like director, which would be a P5.
Nice.
So they use it, and I think every like when you get promoted, you get another like 20 to 30. Like it's very corporate how they do it. They don't look at your experience. They're like, here is that range. Here you go. Yeah. And then as you progress, you get a bigger annual bonus. Like right now I'm at 15%, but I think my manager's like at 25% of your total base salary. So I think that's where you get most of your like money instead of like the very small raises you get every year.
Absolutely. Or like the raises that you get when you leave one company and go to the next, where you can like ask a little bit more.
Yeah.
For sure. What about you?
Yeah, we use engineering ladders. I'm like in the E3 senior software engineer, but I think the next one would be like staff, senior staff, principal. And so based on like your experience and how you've been working during the year and how you've progressed, like you'll move up the ladder if that's something that you want. You can also stay in like a certain like level and then, you know, get your annual bump for like merit increases and
the
raises
merit
and stuff.
increases.
Do you miss out on like not having equity at your company
I
compared
do.
to other engineers that you probably know of?
Yes, I do. I get a little like jealous when I see like these people have like $200,000 worth of like equity, but then I enjoy that I'm at a company where I really like what I do and I love the people I work with and I'm not like worked to the bone. Like I have actual work-life balance and I make that sacrifice because I know, and I've said this to my boss recently, I could go somewhere else and get 100,000 more just based on my experience, but I don't want to do that because I really enjoy the people that I work with and what we do. Like I love the lifestyle of like being in the corporate environment of just being like a cog in the machine right now. Like maybe in the future I will go and get like that RSU stuff and stuff like that. But I think you get to a point as a professional where you just want to like live and work. Like you want to work to live, not live to work, essentially.
And I guess to follow up on that, like, would you see your compensation like? Would you be willing to work more? I know you said you wouldn't, but like work more to get a higher compensation if it meant sacrificing certain like work-life balances you have now?
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I would not.
Not at all.
I would if I need to stay at like the same level and get my usual like my annual bonus and my yearly increase based on performance, then I'm happy with that. If I have to sacrifice like hours, my life, like my hobbies, it's not
Time
worth
outside
it
of
to
it.
me.
And you know, we all live in a very high cost of living area. I ask the people I work with how much they make all the time. I'm not shy about that. I think it's a really important thing to ask. So I even ask people at other companies that are at the same level as me, like, hey, how much do you make at your company? And that's how I kind of compare like what I should potentially be making. That's how I learned to salary negotiate as I got older, because I wasn't really good at it when I first started out. But I, cold email people. I'm like, hey, this is a really weird question, but your role is something that I'm interested in at another company. Like, how much are you making right now? And that's how I knew like the base level what I should be asking for.
No, definitely talking to people like it's not taboo to
it's
ask
not.
people
And
like
it's not illegal.
what.
A lot
It's
of
not illegal
companies
either.
like to, like, be like, oh, you
Yes.
can't talk about that.
No,
But it
absolutely.
is very legal to share your salary.
Talking to people, also checking out job postings and seeing how much pay is for a specific role, maybe that you want to go into or that you're at right now, and seeing like online as well, like just Googling like E3, senior software engineer, staff software engineer, depending on your location, how much are they making? It's all online.
There's also another like site called Levels.fyi that also is like a good indicator. Like sometimes I don't know how accurate it is, but I know for me, like just talking to like friends I have to kind of get like a good tap on like what the market looks like. And then also when like before I got promoted, was asking the person who previously had that role was like, hey, how much were you making? Just to make sure like I feel like I'm getting compensated fairly too, to make sure I'm not leaving anything on the table or getting what I'm worth.
And I think the good thing is I think California has that law now that they have to display salaries on on job roles. So I think that's very helpful too. It shows what companies are underpaid. Yes.
So getting to hear like their salaries in different companies and like what they do for work, it's just really neat. So I enjoy it.
Are you worried about AI replacing you?
I don't think I'm worried. Like I've learned with playing with AI, like in Chat GPT, it can give you like a foundation of what you want, but it will never understand all of the use cases that a human would need to develop something. Like I have to ask it like 5 questions to even get it to what I would, a workable function or something like that. But no, I'm not worried at all.
I think things like Bard and ChatGPT are super cool, but like in terms of replacing certain jobs right now, I just don't see it. I see it rather as like another tool that would help streamline the process and like maybe improve efficiency more. Like maybe in some like long-term scenario, technology would get so good that it replaces like most jobs, and I think in that case, software engineer would be last. But like currently, I don't know if there's a big cause or doomsday scenario that we need to be worried about.
And I feel like most people who are worried about it aren't in tech.
I feel like what you said is true. Like the day that AI completely replaces software engineers, like other roles would have been replaced by now. But it's definitely a tool that you can use to make you more productive, to maybe learn more about another coding language and not have to go through like the documentation or like crazy tutorials. But it's missing the human like problem solving, corrections, testing. Like it may get to a point like that, like maybe years down the road, but then again, like we're still human. We're gonna invent something else, time travel, like we're
There's no way
going
to
to
know.
need software engineers always.
Yeah, so seeing as like we all agreed on that, do you think that like the media might play a role in like fear mongering
for sure.
with certain people that aren't available in the industry?
That's
Because I could see that and just taking advantage of people, or like, I mean, I'm a big dystopian like literature guy. I don't know like how people play into that like that, but yeah.
Like I've seen companies that aren't in tech specifically completely go the AI route with like content creation, and I've seen that fail hard because you don't get that human nature to like an article or something. You can tell it's a robot that wrote this, so I can't imagine like a tech company going full AI and having a success from it.
Yeah, I agree. I think the thing that I would keep in mind though, as like a junior engineer coming into the industry, like I feel like AI could be both helpful and detrimental for like a junior engineer, because a lot of the stuff that a junior engineer would do, like AI could probably like start doing it very soon. And so us as software engineers, we need to be staying on top of our game, like constantly learning, bettering ourselves so that our value doesn't diminish because of like the day-to-day like super boiler code, like simple code is being done by like AI.
You can definitely get boilerplate from it for sure.
Yeah.
But like you said, we have to always stay up to date on technologies. Like you can't, refuse to learn in software engineering. That's not a thing. You have to always be learning or else you are going to get left behind.
All right, so software engineering is a male-dominant field, I think, is something that we've all experienced. So what implication does that have in opportunities for women, and what are the biggest obstacles towards increasing female representation?
The thing I've noticed, like ever since I got into software engineering, is like I was always the only woman in the room up until recently. Like there was just male engineers, and I've had like bosses who say, "Oh, I'm not gonna like hire on diversity and inclusion. I'm gonna hire on talent." And I'm like, how do you quantify that? Like you're just hiring men, so there is like an unconscious bias there. Like you're comfortable with the well known, and like through like I was on the board of Girls Who Code and Girls in Tech for a very long time, and I've learned like there's so many women who are interested in entering the STEM fields, but they don't feel like they'll be supported once they enter it because there's no one who looks like them in those roles. Like the very rare occurrences that there's a female leadership, like a CTO, like they're few and far between. Like I've never had like a female CTO. Like that's what I aspire to represent in my future career. Like I want to be that. So women who come in will be like, I can do that. There's a path there for me. An important thing for me to mentor women who show any interest in like engineering of any sort, because like that could be the guiding light for them to be like, oh, there's someone there who looks like me. Like I think it's just really important, and I really hope that it changes because it's still a very, very minuscule number.
Yeah, it is. Like the company where I work at right now, before the layoffs, there was like a diversity and inclusion team where like their main focus was to diversify the members of our company, and that's not a department in the company anymore, and it makes me feel kind of like, so was that department there just like for show? Like, optics, it's still very important. I can count with my hands the amount of like women that are in my company right now that are software engineers. But it's like you said, like if there's not a dedicated team of people who will make this a priority during hiring, it will be hard to get us to that level because that focus isn't there. One of the things that my company did before the layoffs was referrals. Like you would get more of a bonus if you would hire people from underrepresented groups. And I think that was pretty good, and that's one of the reasons why I got in as well, because my friend referred me at that time. But I think it's just so important for companies that are growing, especially startups, to have these people in recruiting that really care about diversifying, because yeah, it really makes you feel like you can connect to the people that you're working with on another level.
Yeah. I feel like pretty much since I got, and so this is something I've talked to my sister about quite a few times because she's a woman in STEM too. And like something that I guess as a male that you just get used to is like just the amount of men and like everywhere I go in software engineering. And I think there is an onus of like men to be an ally in these spaces in certain ways of like making sure that if you have like roundtable discussions, everyone's voice is heard, or like if something that is problematic is said or certain action is done, is like holding people accountable, not in a way of like shaming others, but more so coming from like an educational perspective. I know that we live in a patriarchy, so like you can't change a system, but like I think just those small efforts to make sure that everyone feels like they belong, both men and women identifying folks, because like certain efforts like taken at the college level would be like scholarship based, but like a lot of women didn't want to even go into that because they didn't feel supported in general, or like certain misogynistic things that they just had to deal with, that it was just like, I will go into a different field entirely, like this is just not worth it.
Like in my first job ever, I had a product manager who told me that he didn't believe women can code well. Like that's the kind of like bias that still exists. Like said it to my face. He's like, so I'm gonna ask the man on your team to do it. I'm like, cool, thanks, you suck. I know, exactly. And it lit a fire under me, of course, but like you shouldn't have to go through that.
No, and one thing you said earlier too that I really resonate with is like seeing, in my experience, like women in like higher like roles. Like our company has a female VP of engineering, and when I saw that she was hired, I'm like, this is amazing. And then I got switched to a team with a female manager, and I'm like, this is great. Like I can actually connect with my manager now, and like, not that I didn't before, but it's just completely different.
It's different because you can see the path for yourself to get to there as well. Whereas opposed if you have a full male leadership, you're like, well, I'm never going to like break the glass ceiling here at all because there's no representation that looks like me here.
In the same room with like another female software engineer who's doing great in her career. It's super inspiring. It pushes me to be better every day and, hopefully get to that level sometime really soon. All right, which do you recommend, working for a startup or working for big tech? Ooh, well, for me, working at a small startup as like a junior engineer was really good because, well, I mean, also it depends what size startup, right? Like startups can be really small and they can be really big. I worked at like a very small startup, and that was invaluable to me at the time because I was in a state where I wanted to get into like full stack development, and the engineers that I work with, which was like 2 other people, at most 3, I got to really like learn from them and pair with them every day and really like work together. And so you get to basically have like a lot of attention from like your senior engineers and learn a lot. Whereas if you start working for a big tech when you're earlier in your career, I feel like it'd be really hard to like connect with the people that you're working with and feel secure enough to ask like those hard questions like we were just mentioning earlier, and feel like you might just be like this little tiny speck in like exactly you won't really feel like you're making that big of an impact. And so that little confidence boost when you're at a small startup and you're like built this feature that was really needed is like great.
And I feel like working at a startup is really important in your career because they're more inclined to let you make mistakes. Whereas a big tech company would be like, we can replace you like in 24 hours, like get out of here. They're more prone to layoffs at big tech companies where startups are like, here, we're all wearing all these hats, like you're not going to be perfect, like we're going to make mistakes. And I think that kind of culture is very valuable when you're first getting in. You can, be a front end, back end, full stack all at the same time in that kind of role. But it is tiring because you are in a very small team.
So I feel like with my company, since it's like, it's pretty well known, like if I talk about it, people are like, oh yeah, I know this company, right? But it's definitely not like a big tech size. And I feel like that's been kind of invaluable for me starting my career, just because it's kind of like the established feel, but also like a lot of the projects we're working on, like I work on a small team. So I get to make like contributions to production, or like I can play ping pong with our VP. Like a lot of like people know who I am, and also getting to like communicate and work with other teams too. And maybe like getting to work on projects that if I was in a bigger role or in a bigger company, getting lost in like the sea of people, like you said, is kind of like, it's not as common. You get a chance to like actually make mistakes, contribute to something. So recently there's been a large amount of tech layoffs. What is your reaction to it, and are you yourself worried?
I think it's really sucky that a lot of
Yeah.
people have lost their jobs because, big tech decided to overhire at a certain point in time when they knew that that was not a sustainable level of employment. So I think it's awful, and so many talented engineers are on the job market now are having a hard time finding something. And I think companies need to be more responsible when hiring. They need to hire to keep, not hire for right now and lay off when they can. I think it's a really important distinction, and I appreciate companies who invest in their employees and make sure that they hire the right person to keep them. I don't enjoy all this mass hiring and then layoffs 6 months later.
I think seeing the layoffs on Reddit or on LinkedIn a lot can be kind of depressing over time.
For sure, yeah.
I will say something that I think would be beneficial is it gives you as an employee a chance to kind of redefine yourself or reevaluate where you're at. As unfortunate as it is, I think trying to take the power back within your own hands and seeing where can I pivot to from here, because it's never a convenient situation. I feel like a lot of people have families, or they're saving up to buy a house or have a mortgage to pay off or want to do a lot of things that suddenly get yanked from them.
I agree. I think you being secure in or feeling am I going to get laid off really depends also on the culture of your company, right? When the layoffs were happening, I was a little worried. But after, that unfortunate thing happened, my company restructured and was hey, we realized we messed up. We are not going to be hiring at this level and at this rate anymore. And so now I'm very much okay, this makes me feel better. And it makes me realize that my company's working towards really valuing their employees and investing in them instead of just constantly adding and filling roles. That's just when I joined, I was told I was going to be working specifically for this team and doing this and that, and it ended up not really happening. And so at that point I was oh man, I was hired to do this thing. I haven't been able to do it because of the organization of the company and the goals, am I going to get laid off? And so if your company is very clear on why you're getting hired and what role you are to have within your team, then that hopefully will make you feel better about not being laid off.
I think also to do a full circle to where we started too, of interviewing for new companies too. You can look up what's their history with hiring and layoffs, and
ask those questions.
Ask those questions, and typically on other sites or the internet's full of information, what are employees' reactions to being laid off? Because it's all out there. So just checking that out too.
I think it's also super important that when you get into a role at a company you really not to make it your personality, because it will hurt much. It will hurt a lot more if you get laid off because you've tied so much of your life into and your worth into this role, when you should not do that. Yes, being a software engineer is amazing, but it's not your worth.
There's so many more aspects to everyone that I feel sometimes we can lose sight of.
Of course, I see so many people devastated that they lost their job at Facebook or at Apple because it was the pinnacle of what they wanted to do. I'm don't do that to yourself. You're still worth a lot. You just will work somewhere else.
I also feel there's this thing too, falling in love with one company too, or people are I'm only gonna work for this one company. I've dreamed of working for this one company, and it's I will not apply to any other company, look for any other company. I just feel
not be loyal.
Just ask around. Don't get so narrow-sighted on certain things.
Exactly, because at the end of the day, a company will never be loyal to you, so you have to make sure to watch out for yourself.
And keep your options open.
Always,
Open mind.
Exactly.
It's not always big tech FANG. They're not the mecca of the best place to work. Yeah, they're gonna have great benefits and probably a good work-life balance, but you can find that in a smaller company as well, in another startup. Yeah.
Good job.
Good job, team.
We killed that.
Thanks for watching The Break Room.